Hello everyone, and welcome to our class, Programming for Everyone, Part 1. I wanted to begin this video by first introducing myself. My name is Nizar Dejani, and I will be your instructor for this class. So it's my sincere pleasure to spend the coming few weeks with you. And it's my personal preference that you call me by my first name. So there's no need for doctor, professor, or even mister. In other words, please just call me Nizar. I already posted an introduction about myself in the onboarding discussion forum, so please do the same if you haven't already done so. Now, these introductory posts can help us to learn more about each other, and I would like to get to know you better, and so these introduction posts help to do just that. Now, a little bit about myself. I've been programming applications since 1997, and I've been teaching since 2009. I actually got into teaching by accident. You see, when I began pursuing my PhD degree, I had no intention of teaching with it. I just wanted the knowledge and the experience of getting a doctorate degree. And shortly after getting my degree, I found an email in my spam folder from someone called Mark Harmon. Now normally, I just delete spam messages as part of my cleanup email effort, but the name Mark Harmon caught my attention because it means something to me. You see, I'm a fan of a TV show called NCIS, and the main character, Gibbs, is played by an actor called Mark Harmon. So I was surprised that I got an email from Mark Harmon. Now, of course, it was not the NCIS actor, but just similarity in names. But to my good luck, when I opened the email, it was from a school dean looking to recruit me as an instructor for a programming class. I discussed the opportunity with my wife, and so I went for it, and I'm certainly glad that I did, because I've been loving it and doing it since 2009 with no plans in stopping anytime soon. So that's my story of how I got into teaching by accident. Now, one thing I noticed while working with students is that they approach programming classes with a mix of emotions. I mean, some are worried and even afraid, while others are very excited. And then there are of course those students who are somewhere along this broad spectrum. Now, regardless of which sentiment you're experiencing right now, please rest assured that I'm here to help you succeed in this class and to make it a positive education experience for you. And this leads me to what I want to discuss next, which is my teaching style. I personally believe that we all learn through different methods and at different rates as well. Some students like to watch videos, others like to read, some like to see examples, and so on. So this class can offer all of that. As for the rate of learning, it will also vary from student to student. For me personally, I need to read any new material a couple of times for things to sink in, and I also learn better by doing. So for example, when I'm learning a new programming language, I read a little bit about it, I watch a few videos, and then I start coding a few lines of code, and I play with it. But that's just me. And also part of my teaching style is that I allow corrections on assignments. For example, you might submit something that is completely off, or perhaps you just misunderstood the assignment's requirements, so you didn't score well on the grade for that particular assignment. Now, instead of me just giving you a low grade and leaving it at that, I will share with you my grading feedback, then I'll ask you to make the needed updates, and then I ask you to resubmit the assignment once again. Now, I do this for two reasons. The first is that we all learn from our mistakes, and so this approach will help you to learn the material better. And the second reason is that this will allow you to improve your grade. So I hope that these two things will give you some peace of mind and take off some of the anxiety that you might be feeling about this class. Now, I intend to make a weekly video for our class, and during these videos, I will be covering the weekly material. I will be doing a PowerPoint presentation to cover the theory behind the weekly material, and I will certainly be doing lots of code examples. I also will be covering the weekly assignments, and I pretty much will be doing the assignments during these videos as well. Now, I do this extra help as a way to help you understand the concepts well. And if you're serious about learning to code, please also spend some time on your own to practice all the things that we learn about during these videos. If you just copy what I do, it will not be enough for you to develop and grow as a programmer. So please watch what I do, complete your assignments, but then spend an hour or more each day practicing programming. Modify the code in your assignments, give yourself some what if I do this type scenario, and when something doesn't work, troubleshoot it. This is when the learning truly kicks in. Watching me write code is helpful, but you also need to play around with it and write code yourself. Okay, now since this is our first video, I wanted to mention that if you need to reach me, the best two ways are either through the school's email, which is ndejani@rise.education, or through the Canvas inbox. The other way is the Q&A discussion forum in our class. Just please remember that the Q&A discussion forum is a public forum that can be viewed by the entire class. And so if you need to send me something that pertains only to you, please email me instead. Okay, now this class is part of the summer term. It's an 8-week class. It also means that the material is condensed into less time, so you need to be on top of things and not fall behind. Also, each week runs from Monday to Sunday. This means that assignments are due each week on Sunday by midnight. And if you ever need some extra time for your assignment, please do reach out to me via email, and I'll work with you to allow it. Having said that, please don't leave your schoolwork to Sunday evening, as that's just poor time management, and you will not gain much knowledge when you attempt to squeeze the assignment work in such a short period of time. My suggestion is to break up the weekly work over several days. I also believe that you need to practice coding each day for at least an hour, at least for the first few months, so you can build and grow your coding skills. And I'm confident you can be excellent programmers. Alright, so now that all the housekeeping items have been covered, let's dive into the main core subject of this course, the very popular programming language, Python. Okay, so Python is a very popular high-level programming language. And what does the term high-level actually mean? Well, it means it's written in plain, simple human language, so you and I can type it up and understand it. But computers don't understand human language. They only understand one machine language, which is called binary. And this binary language only has 2 characters, zeros and ones. For example, here are some English characters and their equivalents in binary code. So again, aren't you happy that we don't have to code in binary? Another thing to know about Python is that it's an interpreted language. Now in programming, we can have compiled languages or interpreted languages. Compiled languages basically means that the source code is compiled into binary code and the output is an executable file that can be run at any time, as many times as you like. But an interpreted language will run the code line by line and execute it on the spot. So Python is an interpreted language. Now the pros and cons of compiled versus interpreted is a long discussion, but for now, please know that Python is an interpreted language and its code is executed line by line in sequence from top to bottom. Now this is just one website where you can enter text in plain English and then click on the convert to binary button and it will give you back the binary code that's equivalent to whatever text you entered. And you can already see here that we have ABC kind of in grayed out colors and the conversion already for these 3 letters. So the letter A in plain English gets converted into this 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, there are 8 bits, so it's a combination of 8 0 and 1s. And then the B letter would look like this, and the C letter would look like this. So if I, for example, in Python, I can call the print function and then pass it the message hello world. Alright, so this is an easy to understand English letters and sentence and words. But down here, I click on convert to binary, and then it gives me the converted English text into binary code. Okay, so as you can see here, this is much easier to understand than this. Alright, imagine if you had to write this for every single character. It's not going to be fun and easy. So that's why Python is considered a high-level programming language where we can just type English letters and it gets converted to machine language, which is binary code. Okay, now I always like to understand how things started out, so let me take you through a very quick history tour to explain how Python came to be. It all started with a Dutch software engineer called Guido van Rossum. He started out as a junior programmer at CWI, which is the National Research Institute for Mathematics and Computer Science in the Netherlands, which is better known by the country name of Holland. Now, Van Rossum and his research team wanted to develop a programming language which would enable people without programming experience, like scientists and data analysts, to start writing computer programs fairly quickly. Now, as you can imagine, Van Rossum also had worked with other programming languages, and he found drawbacks with some of them. So for about a year or so, he worked on creating a new language that filled a need. Now, this took place towards the end of the 1980s, and the internet was not yet available. But there existed an online communication tool called Usenet, and Van Rossum posted his work there to distribute Python to the world. And it didn't take very long for other programmers around the world to take notice, and eventually Python's popularity gained traction, and Van Rossum became known as the benevolent dictator of Python. Now, Python is a multi-purpose programming language, so you can use it to solve many types of business problems. You can use it in web development, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science, and automation. And in case you didn't know, Python is very popular in creating famous websites that you might be using on a daily basis, like YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. Alright, now, like many of you, when I first heard of Python, I was surprised by the name, and I wanted to know why and how the creators came up with this particular name. So I went straight to the source and got my answer from an interview conducted with Python's creator. When Guido van Rossum began implementing Python, he was also reading the published scripts from Monty Python's Flying Circus, which was a BBC TV comedy series from the 1970s. So Rossum thought that he needed a name for his language, and the name should be short, it should be unique, and should be slightly mysterious. So he decided to call the language Python. So there you have it, and now you know why Python is called by that name. Alright, variables. This is a fundamental concept in programming. Variables are the building blocks that enable us to work with data dynamically within our code. So what exactly is a variable? Well, think of it as a named storage location in your computer's memory. It's where we stash data for our programs to use. And what's special is that this data can change as our program runs. Hence the name variable. Now, let's talk about how we name these variables. While we have some freedom in naming them, there are certain rules we must follow to keep things organized and understandable. First off, in Python, a variable name has to start with a letter or an underscore. For example, underscore temperature, or simply h. These are two examples of acceptable variable names. But variable names cannot begin with a number. So something like second place is a no-go. Also in Python, variable names can only contain letters, numbers, and underscores. So user underscore name or product123, both are fine. And last but not least, variable names are case sensitive. This means that the variable age with all lowercase letters and age with a capital A and age in all caps, these three variable names are treated as different variables. So please pay attention to upper and lower case in variable names. And as we work with variables, it's good practice to choose names that make sense and reflect what the variable represents. This makes our code much easier to understand, of course. So while you might name a variable as just the letter X, this particular name might not be helpful in explaining what this variable is used for or what value it might contain. So again, since you have the freedom to name your variables, please name them accordingly and appropriately. I will also talk about different naming conventions in a minute or so. So now that we know what variables are, let's talk about their different types. In Python, there are four basic built-in data types. We have strings, integers, floats, and booleans. So let's begin with strings. In Python, a string is a sequence of characters enclosed within single or double quotes. It's used to represent text data. For example, consider the string, hello, I am happy today. In Python, this is a string literal, which basically means it's a group of characters within quotes, so it's of the string data type. Next, we have integers. In Python, an integer is a whole number without any decimal points. It can be positive, negative, or even 0. Take the number 5543. This is of the integer type in Python, because integers are used to represent whole numeric values. Now, if you have a number that contains a decimal, then now we are talking about another data type, and that is called a float. In Python, a float represents a numerical value with a decimal point. It can be positive or negative. And we call it a float because the decimal point can float in either direction. For example, consider the float number 24.567. In Python, this is a floating number capable of representing both whole and fractional parts of a number. And the last basic data type in Python is called a boolean. This represents truth or falsity values like true or false. We can also have 0 and 1, where 1 is true and 0 is false. Alright, so by now we are familiar with variables and how they are memory addresses which hold values of a single item. But what happens when we want to have a variable that stores multiple values at once as one variable? Well, this is where we introduce the concept of a collection. Think of a variable as a storage for single value items, while a collection is a storage for multiple value items. And so lists is one example of a collection, and in Python there are other types of collections like dictionaries, tuples, and sets. Now let's delve into some of the key collection data types in Python. So first up, we have lists. In Python, a list is an ordered collection of elements enclosed within square brackets. It's a versatile data structure that can hold a variety of data types. For example, consider this list that has a collection of names: James, Jack, Lisa, Miranda, Jen. In Python, this is a list literal, containing multiple elements that are separated by commas. And since we learned moments ago that anything surrounded by quotes is a string, then this particular example is a list of strings. Having said that though, a single list can contain a mix of data types, not just one data type. So the items in a list can be a mix of strings, as well as integers and booleans, just as an example. Now let's discuss also dictionaries. A dictionary in Python is a collection of key value pairs enclosed within curly braces. It allows us to store and retrieve data using the key names. So for example, consider this dictionary where we have a key called make and its value is Honda, another key called model and its value called Civic, and another key called year and its value is 2015. Here, each key value pair represents a piece of information about a car. If this is a bit confusing, please don't worry, as we will cover it in great details in a future video. Next in the collection data types, we have tuples. Now a tuple in Python is an ordered collection of elements enclosed within parentheses. Now, unlike lists, tuples are immutable, meaning that their elements cannot be changed once defined. For instance, consider the tuple 5, 22, 5, 11, 22. In Python, this is a tuple literal containing multiple elements. And as you can see, some elements are duplicated, which is a feature of tuples to allow duplicate values. And finally, let's talk about sets. A set in Python is an unordered collection of unique elements enclosed within curly braces. Sets are usually for tasks like removing duplicates or performing set operations. An example of a set is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and in Python, this is a set literal containing unique elements without any specific order. Now, one nice cool feature about Python is that there is no command that we have to use to declare a variable. In other programming languages, you have to call the variable type as you're declaring the variable. In Python, it's a little bit different. So for example, here I have age equals to 25. I didn't specify what data type age is, I just said that age is assigned a value of 25. Now Python is smart enough to say that, okay, based on the value of this variable, then this variable, which is called age, is of the type integer, because integer is a whole number. Alright, same thing with name. Name is a variable, and it's of the type string, because the value of name is Mary surrounded by double quotes, which makes this variable type a string. And logged in, or logged underscore in, has a value of false, and that makes it a data type of boolean, which could be true and false, could also be 0 and 1. Alright, so again, we'll see some examples of that soon, but just so you know, with Python, we don't have to declare the variable type when we are declaring the variable itself. Another nice thing about Python variables is that not only do we not have to declare the type ahead of time, but we can also change the type as well as the value. So once we create a variable name and give it a value, which would tell us the data type, this value is going to change, or it can change because it's a variable, but also I can change the variable type to be something else. And we'll see examples of that also in a little bit. Now, it is also important that we use some sort of a standard when we name our variables, and not just variables but also functions. So there are different naming conventions in the programming world. One of them is the camel casing, the other is Pascal casing, and we also have snake casing. So let's assume that we have a variable called my first name. All right, if we follow the camel casing format, then the first word is all going to be lowercase, and then every other word is going to have the first letter capital, and everything else is going to be lowercase. So my first name is going to have all lower first letters, and then the first name is going to have the first capital letter, and then the next word is going to have the first capital letter as well. So why is this called a camel casing? Well, because camels have humps, and again, this kind of looks like camel and then a hump, camel and then a hump. Okay. Then we move on to the Pascal casing, and basically using the same exact example of my first name, the first letter of every word is going to be capital. So M is capital, F is capital, and N is capital. Then we have snake casing, where everything is in lowercase, and if we have multiple words to join them, we join them using an underscore. Now, the snake casing is the popular or the go-to naming convention in Python language. Is this a must? No, it's not a must. It's not a rule. It's just best programming practices and kind of the culture of Python. Now, it's part of best programming practice to use a naming convention and follow it and stick with it throughout the entire application. Your code is going to look nicer and cleaner and more understandable, and many months down the road, if you look at your own code or someone else reviews your code, it's always nice to have some sort of a standard to follow. So if you have, some variables that sometimes they use Pascal case, and then somewhere else in the application they follow a snake case, and then somewhere else they follow the camel case, it's not going to be clean code. It's not going to be beautiful code. So always strive to follow some sort of a standard. Your company might have a development team that follows Pascal casing, and you might have been used to the snake casing. So again, follow whatever the group that you're working with or whatever team you're in, and see what they follow, and to be consistent, follow whatever they do. You can certainly propose to them that, hey, we are doing Python is more snake case friendly, so let's please switch to snake casing, and try to make the case for it. And if it's acceptable, good for you. But again, try to choose a naming convention and follow it throughout the entire application. Now, just like we talked about variables, and we now know that the value of variables can change because they're called variables, we can also have the opposite, which is constant. So a constant basically is data values that stay the same every time a program is executed. So for example, you remember pi from our math days in high school or middle school? Pi is always going to equal to 3.14, no matter what. Okay, so this is a constant. It doesn't change. Now, the naming convention for constants is to make it all in capital letter. Okay, so as you can see here, pi is spelled pi, but it's capital P, capital I. All right, and since the value doesn't change, then anyone looking at this and seeing that it's all in caps is going to say, okay, this looks like a constant value. Same thing with also, we can make up our own constants, of course, just like we can make up our own variables. So say you're making an application for Google, and the company name is always going to be Google. It's not going to change. So we have a constant called company underscore name, and we set it equal to Google. All right. It's just a constant is a variable, but we kind of denote it as a constant just by using all cap letters. Again, constants are all uppercase characters separated by an underscore for multiple words. So if we're programming a game and we want to have a set constant of 3 lives or 3 initial lives, then we can create a constant called number underscore of underscore initial underscore lives. So this constant is going to equal to 3, and since it's all in capital letters, then we can understand immediately by looking at it that this is a constant value. Now, as you create your variables and create your constants, again, we know that we can create them and call them anything we want. However, there is something called reserved words in Python. Now, these reserved words are special words that cannot be used as variable names or as function names. So for example, I can't use the word finally for a variable or a function. I can't use the word import for a variable function. I can't use lambda, none, not, or, pass. So any of these words, these are basically called reserved words, and they cannot be used as any sort of identifier like a variable or a function. And we're going to be using most of these words eventually in our code examples throughout this term. So for our week 1 material, you can see that it starts on May the 6th, which is a Monday, and it goes through to May 12th, which is Sunday. And every module in general will be broken up into the overview section, then the assignment section, then the resource section. So please go through every single link here and open it up and read it and understand exactly what's being offered. Overview is just a overview of what the week is going to be about. Assignments are broken down into all the assignments, and under each assignment you're either going to have no information under it, but sometime you're going to have the due date and the number of points. Okay, so starting with the very first one, let's open that up together. The week 1 attendance check, or in general you're going to have a weekly attendance check. This is a school requirement, your school requirement. They need to know that you are attending the class each week. Now normally if you post a discussion, that counts as an attendance check. If you submit an assignment, that also posts as an attendance check. But sometimes you don't do these two things, and so if you don't show that you are attending the class, then there could be some consequences regarding financial assistance or your financial aid. So we have this assignment here, which just takes a few seconds. Please take it, and this will confirm that you are still in school, and so financial aid is not going to be affected. All right, so just please make sure that you do the weekly attendance check. Next assignment for week 1 is an onboarding survey. Again, it's very quick, just a few questions. Now, what's expected of you is to, once you do the survey, you're going to get an email. All right, and once you get this email, please take a screenshot of the email, and that's the file that you uploaded to the assignment to confirm that you did complete the assignment. And it's worth 20 points, and these are very easy points, so please, don't lose them. Next assignment is the academic policies quiz. Now it says it's 15 minutes long, or it takes 15 minutes to complete. Now the nice thing here is that it allows you 2 attempts. It's worth 10 points for 12 questions, and you get 2 attempts. Now before taking this quiz, it makes sense that you study the academic policies by following this link here. All right, so have this link open and then take the quiz and answer the questions. Next assignment is the onboarding introduction discussions. Now it's this one is not due this Sunday. As you can see, Sunday is May the 12th, this coming Sunday. But the onboarding introduction discussion, this is going to be due the following Sunday. So we give you 2 weeks to finish this assignment. It's worth 20 points. 10 points are going to go towards your main post, which is you introducing yourself to the class, and then the other 10 points will be earned if you post a reply to at least one of your classmates. This is the main assignment, again due on Sunday. It's worth 60 points, and we are going to be talking about Python variables using turtle graphics. I'll go through that in just a moment. And then we have a extra credit quiz. So the extra credit basically means it's extra credit, and the point value is 0. But if you do score any points, then you will get these points as extra points. There are 5 questions in the extra credit quizzes. Each question is worth 1 point, so there are 5 questions, and you can gain a maximum of 5 points. Now I will be covering these, or we'll be going over these quizzes, not on that week, but on the following week, because I'm going to be giving you the answers to these quizzes. All right. The resources section is very important. Again, it has a lot of, sometimes it's going to have videos to watch, sometimes it's going to have links to read or articles to read, and of course we also have the Q&A discussion forum. All right, so please make sure that you, with every week, you open up every single link, go through it, understand what it's asking you to do, and maximize your points and also your understanding by reading everything thoroughly. All right, let's open up then the main assignment. So here are the assignment details. It tells you when it's due, tells you how many points you get, and it tells you what you need to submit. Please do read all the details here, and of course you also need to follow the steps as described in this section. So basically it says navigate to the embedded trinket section. Okay, so the embedded trinket section is this section down here. All right, you can see here that it says embedded trinket. Now a trinket is basically a tool or an interface, usually it's a website, that allows us to write code without having to download anything. Typically, when you want to write code, you have to download some sort of a editor. It could be an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. And this is where you can write your code and then run your code and so on. With Trinket, and the full website is trinket.io, basically it allows you to just have an interface where you can write the code and run it, and that's all you have to do. So for example, here is a Trinket embedded. If I click on run, it's going to start running it for me. So the code is on the left. Again, I don't expect you to understand what all this code means, which is okay. And then when you run it, it just runs it for you on the right here. Okay, just to give you some information on this interface, this is a menu. If you click on it, it's going to open up to a few options. There's a module option, which basically Turtle is a module, but again, don't expect you to know that yet. We will talk about that later. You can reset the code that you have here to go back to the original code. You can open up the screen to full screen. You can download the code, and you can also change some settings. And you can also share your Trinket. So basically you can share it, you can embed the code, or you can email it. And also you can increase the font size. If this is too small for you, you can click on this and it makes it a little bit bigger. All right, let's take it back one notch. Actually, let's take it down a couple of notches. All right, so if I go up again to the steps section, so basically it says here, navigate to the embedded Trinket section, which we did below on this assignment located in resource 1, and edit the Trinket code. So how do we edit the Trinket code? Well, it says edit the following Python variables in the script. And it says to replace, please enter your name with your name in the name variable. Okay, so let's scroll down here. And again, please enter your name. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this data and just make it my name. All right, that's step number 1. Now step number 2 is replace please enter your school with the name of your school in the school variable. So go up here, highlight the data we want to replace, and I'll type Rise Education. And then it says here, replace the blank in welcome to blank with Python in the subject variable. Okay, so scroll down, try to find that line, welcome to. Let's highlight this text, and we type Python. Okay, doesn't ask us to do anything else. Then run the code by clicking the run button. You should see an interactive turtle graphic that includes your name. Okay, and once your graphic runs successfully, take a screenshot of the output and finally submit the screenshot on the Canvas evaluation. All right, so now that I made all the changes, again, I had very simple changes. I don't expect you to know all this code yet, but we will in due time. So I'm going to run this code. Now, when I ran it first, it didn't have the changes. Okay, so now if I run it again, let's see if it's going to capture the changes that I made. Welcome to Python. Here's an update. Yep. Name is Nazar. Yep. And school is Rise Education. So it looks like the changes have been implemented correctly. Now to take a screenshot of, I do see the changes here, but I don't see the change down here as well. So what we need to do is, probably the best thing to do is just to go to full screen mode. Okay, so now we see all the code. Here are the changes I made, and here are the changes I made, and I can see when it ran. Okay, so take a screenshot of this, and this screenshot is what you need to submit to the assignment. So again, Trinket is just one way for you to type code, and we will be exposing you to a few ways or a few tools that you can do that. But in general, this is a tool that doesn't require you to download or install Python. Now, should you download and install Python, which you should eventually, basically go to python.org, and from there you need to go to the Downloads tab, and then it automatically picked up that I'm running on a Mac OS because I'm on a MacBook, and it gives me the latest and greatest. If you want to download the latest and greatest, which you should, just click on this and follow the screens. You can also get a full list of downloads if you want previous versions. You can also click on other operating systems or other platforms if you want to download the install file for something that's not your operating system. Another thing that's very helpful on this website is the documentation website. Okay, documentation websites, again, is if you need any information regarding Python, if you're trying to troubleshoot something, if you're trying to understand how a function works or how variables work, or anything about Python, this would be a good starting point. Now, this is a simple Python file, and it has some basic fundamentals that I want to show you today. The very first line is that it starts with the pound character, and that signifies to Python that this is a comment. So in part of best programming practices is that you need to add comments in your code. This helps to explain what the code is about and also includes some helpful tidbits for future peer reviews or future code reviews. So we start with the character pound, and then anything after the pound character is going to be treated by Python as not code, but as a comment. Another way we can also write a comment is by using the triple single digits. Now, what this is nice for is that if you have a long comment, so if you have a long comment, or if you want to write, lines of comments, then instead of just writing, for example, here's a new line, da 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 da, and then another new comment line, da 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 da, and so on. A simple way is to have a string literal, which basically starts with 3 single quotes, and then you can write whatever you want, and then you close it with 3 single quotes. So again, Python is an interpreted language, and it's going to read line by line, and it's going to interpret it line by line. So when it comes to a hashtag or a pound sign, it's going to say, okay, this is not code, this is just a comment, so I'm not going to process it, I'm going to skip it. Then comes down here, okay, this is also string literal, which is basically a multi-lined comment, so I'm also going to skip it. I'm not going to execute it. And here's another comment, and now here's our first line of code. So this is a variable name. Again, I'm using camel casing, so I have first underscore name. I'm going to use the equal sign so I could assign it a value. I'm going to assign it the value Nazar, and it's in single quotes. Now we learned that strings are basically a sequence of characters that are surrounded by either single quotes or double quotes. So here I'm showing you an example with a variable or a string variable using single quotes and a string variable using double quotes, and they're both going to be looked at as the same by Python, meaning that it's going to understand that this is a string variable. All right, so once I have my variables defined and assigned, I'm going to use the print function. Now, print function is one of those built-in functions in Python. It comes pre-built with the Python program, and it accepts some arguments. And the first one is just a string. So I'm going to print hi. So print basically is going to display an output on my screen or an output in my command line prompt. So the print function takes a bunch of arguments. The first one is a value, which is a string, and then I'm going to give it also more values, but this time not strings, but basically name of variables. So I'm going to print hi, followed by first underscore name, whatever the value is, which in this case it's Nazar, followed by last underscore name variable, and the value that it holds is the word Dejeni. Okay, so if I run this, I'm going to get hi Nazar Dejeni. Okay, and we'll see that in just a moment when I run it. And then down here I am creating another variable called age, and I'm going to assign it a value of 51. And here I just wanted to show you that you can also have a comment not on a line by itself, but anywhere. And as soon as you type the hashtag or the pound sign, anything after that will be interpreted by Python as a comment, so there's nothing to execute. Then we come to the next line of code. It's another print statement, and it's going to print the text, the data type of age is, and then I'm going to follow by type age. So type is another built-in function, just like print is a built-in function. Type is also a built-in function, and I'm going to pass it one argument called age. Now what type does is that it tells us, or it returns, the type of this variable. Okay, so age up until now is 51, and 51 is an integer, so this type age should return that it's an integer type. Then down here I'm going to reassign age to a value of 51, but with double quotes. So this should be a string type. And then when I print the same statement again and ask for the type of age, this time it should return the string type, and we'll see that in a moment as well. Then I have another comment here, and then I'm going to introduce you to a third built-in function, which is input. So now we know print, and now we know type, and now we're going to know input. So input basically is an interactive function that allows or that prompts users to do something. So I type the word input, which is the name of the function, and in my parentheses I'm going to pass the argument, please enter your username. Now, a moment ago or a few moments ago, I explained that Python is an interpreted language that reads the or executes the code line by line. So when I run this file, it's going to start, going line by line, doing whatever it needs to be doing. So again, since these are comments, it's going to ignore them, comments ignore, and then here, then it's going to start to execute this line by line. But the point is, when it comes down to an input needs some sort of an action or an interaction from the user. So as soon as it comes to this input function, it's going to stop, okay, because it's waiting on the user to do something. The cursor is going to be flashing. Again, you can see that in a moment, until someone enters some sort of a value and then hit enter. And when you hit enter, then it continues down the next line of code. And the next line of code basically just a print function that says you entered the username, whatever the username is, which is captured from this line up here. All right, so let's run all this. Now, to run this in idle, all right, so I'm using this idle program. Now, idle comes pre-installed once you download and install Python. It's a very simple application. It's not an IDE. It's much simpler. It's kind of like a text editor, but it allows you to write Python code. So I'm using this just for my example. Now up here there is the run menu, and then I could click on run module. But you can also see that there is a keyboard shortcut which is F5, and that's what I'm going to be doing after I run this first attempt. So I run it, and this is what I get back. Now let me just drag this to the right. Now you can see here, up here, it says idle shell 3.12.2. So this is telling me that it's running Python, and there are different versions of Pythons, of course, but the one that I have running on my computer right now is the 3.12.11 version. Alright, so the first output is hi Nizar Dejani, and this basically is from this print statement here. Okay, and I'm going to explain to you also why there is a space here, because I don't have a space here anywhere between the word hi, the word first name, and the word last name. Okay, but I'll explain that in just a moment. Then I have the output or the print statement. The data type of age is class int. Okay, so class, don't worry about the word class, that's for another day. But int is basically short for integer, and it's basically telling us that this is the data type. This is the result of type age. So type is a built-in function. I'm going to get the type of this variable, and this variable age is 51, so 51 is integer. But then I change age equal to 51 as a string, and then I display the data type of it, and it comes back as string, or str for short. So this is correct. So here is proof that I can have the same variable, and I can change the data type. I can also change the value if I want. All right, and then we come down to the prompt, please enter your username. So see how the code stopped running, and it's just flashing at me. Here's the cursor just flashing. So I need to interact with the program and do something. So it says, please enter your username. I'm going to say Ndejeni. I'm going to hit enter. And then after you do the input, then you go to and you do type in an input. Then it goes on to the next line of code, which is you entered whatever you typed. And in this case, it's you entered Ndejeni. All right. Now, the print function comes with a few options. I mean, most functions are going to come with a few options that you can use as attributes between the parentheses. For example, if you just type the word print and then open parentheses, you're going to get, the full attribute list or argument list that you can use. For example, sep is one of the arguments, and by default it's a space. So sep is short for separator. So anytime you want to print something, it gets separated by default using a space. So that's why in this example, hi, then there's a space, which is the default separator, followed by the variable, followed by a space, which again is the default separator. Now, if I want to, so if I go up here and I type in a comma, and then I type sep for separator, and then set it equal to, not a space, but I'm going to do, let's say, dash, 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 and then close it. And let's get rid of this guy first. And now let's run it. Okay, so I'm prompted for a username again, so I'm going to type Ndejeni, hit enter, And there we go, you entered, and then the separator is not a space anymore, but it's whatever I specified, which was the dash dash dash. Okay, so that's one thing we can also add to the print function. Notice also that every time I finish the code, immediately on the next line I get the command line prompt. Okay, but I can also change that. So within, let me show you what we currently have. So print, there's a end argument. So the end argument by default is a /n. /n basically means new line. Okay, so if you want to add more new lines, or if you want to somehow do something at the end of your print function, then you need to specify explicitly what you want to do for the end. So let me get rid of this for now, and let me go back to here. Now I'm going to add an end argument. I'm going to set it equal to not just 1/n, but let's make another line and another line, another line and another line, and then close it. All right, now if I run this and I type ndegeni, hit enter, see how now I have multiple new lines have been entered. So after the end of my print statement, I also added something. So that's what the end does, and that's what the separator does. Another thing I also wanted to talk about is the import statement, okay, or the import keyword. So import basically allows us to, as the name implies, import something into our Python code. And in the turtle example that we saw from our assignment, we had import turtle. Okay, now what import turtle does is it imports a module called turtle, or a library called turtle. Now you might hear the terms library and module when using the import word, and basically a library is as you can guess it, it's a library of things, and then inside those libraries we could have modules. All right, sometimes modules and libraries are used interchangeably, but that's kind of the key definition for both of them. So there is a module or a library called turtle, and what that allows us to is that it gives us access to so many functionality that if we had to do them ourselves, it's going to take us maybe weeks, months, or years. So someone already came up with this module or this library that has all this functionality, and we just have to learn how to use it and use it. Okay, so we import everything that's in this module, and then once we import it, then we can start to use the functions and variables and attributes and properties that are part of this module. Now some libraries come as part of the standard Python library, while others we have to install first. Okay, so I'm going to show you probably in another video how to install modules, but just so you know, this import keyword basically means that I'm going to import an external code so I can use within my own code. All right, so again, this is just a basic introduction to Python, some fundamentals, some variables, some built-in functions, some comments, and in the following weeks we're going to be learning more and more. We're going to be delving deeper and deeper, but for now I think this is a good start. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, you could email me through the Canvas inbox, or you could email me directly at ndegeni@rise.education. Whatever the problem is, try to troubleshoot it yourself first, because troubleshooting does build the programming skills. And also, if you're stuck, one thing that I do when coping with problems is, of course, I try to troubleshoot as much as I can, but also when I just can't figure it out, I also step aside, I walk away, and then I come back later with a fresh mind, and usually I figure out then. But by all means, do reach out to me as well. I'm your resource, so take advantage of that. If you ever have a question about a code not working, always send me the actual Python file. And it's been my experience that if you send the Python file through the Canvas inbox, it works fine. But if you send it through a regular email, my Outlook just refuses it, so I don't get the attachment. So if you want to send me code, please do send it through the Canvas inbox. So thank you very much for watching this video. Again, if you have any questions, reach out, but I'll be seeing you guys in class, and take care, and bye for now.